During the American Revolutionary War, a strict historical paradox emerged. Line infantry surrendered and became regular prisoners, but commanders demonstratively executed captured snipers on the spot. They existed entirely outside established military conventions. Why did tribunals deny regular army soldiers the right to life upon surrender? The answer lies strictly in the geometry of the gun barrel. Standard muskets delivered random tactical suppression. Then gunsmiths introduced rifled barrels. Artisans cut deep spiral grooves inside the expensive, custom-forged steel. This internal geometry forced the lead projectile to spin. Spin guaranteed unprecedented ballistic stability. A shooter measured the powder. He loaded the custom weapon. He tracked the target and pulled the trigger. Deep inside a secured command camp, a high-ranking officer suddenly collapsed. No warning, no massed volley, just one precise kinetic strike. This mechanical precision shattered standard military doctrine. A single individual now dismantled the command hierarchy from a distance. Commanders did not execute snipers out of emotional revenge. They enforced a rigid systemic protocol. Army justice classified these specific shooters as non-conventional assassins. They operated outside the accepted laws of linear warfare. Their technological advantage generated absolute psychological terror. At the Battle of Saratoga, a handful of independent riflemen systematically eliminated the British officer corps. The resulting psychological panic immediately halted the advance of an entire active regiment. To decode the mechanics of this psychological terror, one must examine the internal geometry of the weapon that eliminated General John Sedgwick in May 1864. The general commanded his troops at the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse. The distance measured exactly 800 yards. The Confederate marksman calculated the elevation drop. The trigger engaged. A lead projectile crossed the battlefield in less than 3 seconds. It struck Sedgwick precisely below the left eye. The general collapsed. Executing a lethal strike at 800 yards, roughly 730 meters, in 1864, constitutes the mathematical equivalent of a 3-kilometer kill using a contemporary sniper platform. Regular line infantry already utilized the expanding mini-ball. This hollow-based lead ammunition expanded upon firing to grip standard barrel grooves. It instantly pushed standard engagement distances to 300 yards, but the new precision platforms operated completely outside regular infantry parameters. British engineers abandoned traditional rifling grooves. They manufactured the imported Whitworth rifles with a twisted hexagonal bore. The internal visual profile of the steel barrel formed a perfect 6-sided polygon. This strict geometry required a mechanically matched hard lead bullet. The tight hexagonal seal eliminated propellant gas leakage. Muzzle velocity spiked exponentially. The weapon fired a specialized projectile in caliber .451. Gunsmiths secured heavy brass telescopic sights directly onto the receiver and barrel. The optics magnified the target field. Lethal accuracy immediately extended beyond 1,000 yards. The elimination of high-ranking officers shifted from random probability to calculated doctrine. Confederate generals analyzed the resulting structural paralysis within Union forces. They systematically extracted the highest-scoring marksmen from standard infantry regiments. Commanders consolidated these individual shooters into independent tactical units. The Confederate Army formally deployed the first dedicated sharpshooter battalions equipped with precision optical sights. The calculated precision of the 1860s stood in absolute contrast to the earlier campaigns in colonial India. That theater birthed the terminology. British officers stationed there hunted the snipe bird. The bird flushed suddenly from cover. Hitting it required complex spatial calculation and rapid reflex. Successful marksmen earned a specific title. They became snipers. How do you hit a target if barrel ballistics make precision impossible? Until the 19th century, armies solved this exclusively through volume of fire. Tactical doctrine demanded density. Commanders massed infantry in tight linear formations. Hundreds of men fired simultaneous volleys. Individual accuracy meant nothing. Standard troops operated smoothbore muskets. The mechanical limitations defined the battlefield. A lead ball traveled down an unrifled steel tube. Upon exiting the muzzle, the projectile completely lacked gyroscopic stability. The probability of an aimed strike mathematically approached zero due to the rapid aerodynamic destabilization of the spherical bullet. Random drift overrode human skill. The erratic, zigzag flight trajectory of the snipe bird represented the absolute standard for an unpredictable moving target. A standard smoothbore infantry musket possessed a maximum effective aimed range of exactly 80 yards. The gap between 80 yards and systematic execution closed rapidly. In 1914, individual marksmanship integrated directly into the industrial machinery of the First World War. Civilian sporting optics migrated from elite hunting clubs straight to the front lines. Standard infantry rifles now utilize superior smokeless powder. Effective engagement distances expanded drastically. Standard issue weapons reached 1,000 yards. Armies globally adopted full metal jacket bullets. Mass volley fire failed. Cavalry charges collapsed against rapid-fire artillery, rendering traditional offensive maneuvers mathematically obsolete overnight. Mobile warfare collapsed. The conflict solidified into a static trench network. Movement ceased entirely. Here, the precision optic found its optimal environment. German snipers adapted first. They mounted high-magnification custom glass on standard military hardware. The sharp metallic click of a bolt-action hunting rifle echoed through the damp, dirty trench. The integration of specialized lenses transformed a basic infantry firearm into an instrument of systemic area denial. Absolute zone control. Entire sectors froze. Allied troops found themselves trapped in calculated kill zones. Routine daily tasks became lethal. Expert marksmen systematically executed any soldier who carelessly raised his head above the trench parapet. The lethality at 1,000 yards forced an immediate engineering response. How do you eliminate a target fully concealed behind sandbags? The physical geometry of the earthworks provided a structural solution. Marksmen mastered the ballistics of directed ricochets. A high-velocity round struck the forward parapet at a specific angle. The projectile deformed upon impact. Its trajectory shifted sharply downward. The fragmented bullet hit the infantryman sheltering directly below the sightline. Direct observation ceased. Infantrymen relied entirely on mirrored periscopes. German engineers fortified their positions with heavy steel shields. Narrow horizontal slits accommodated the rifle barrels. The British response required extreme kinetic force. Command requisitioned large-caliber elephant rifles directly from colonial sporting reserves. The massive rounds fractured the German armor plates. Yet a single marksman still paralyzed entire combat battalions. Eradicating one hidden position demanded disproportionate resource allocation. Artillery batteries leveled entire grid squares just to neutralize a lone shooter. The financial cost of one high-explosive suppression barrage exceeded the budget to equip a complete infantry platoon. Shell craters multiplied. Artillery barrages saturated the terrain. This ruptured landscape established the physical foundation for advanced tactical camouflage. Area bombardments failed to stop the systematic execution. Conventional cover proved structurally deficient. On specific frontline sectors, the daily attrition rate reached a terminal constant: 10 dead soldiers. While engineers constructed fake horses on the Western Front of the First World War, the Winter War in Finland proved the mathematical threat of a lone shooter. How does one man paralyze the command structure of an entire army? Through the systematic elimination of the officer corps. The Finnish marksman Simo Haiha reduced sniper warfare to pure attrition statistics. He targeted the Soviet Red Army. He scanned the tree lines for any visual indicator of authority: salutes, hand gestures, unique uniform cuts. Over 500 confirmed hits demonstrated a critical structural vulnerability in standard military hierarchy. A single precise rifle dictated operational behavior across the entire sector. Officers adapted rapidly to survive. Soviet commanders knelt directly in the freezing snow. Thick fabric tore loudly. Men heard the dull metallic clank of enameled star cockades as lieutenants shoved them deep into uniform pockets. The visual signature of leadership vanished entirely. Troops observed only the absolutely empty, insignialess greatcoats of the Soviet command. Before this tactical shift, a frontline platoon leader survived merely days. After field units implemented the strict concealment protocol, the statistical survivability of the officer corps increased by 40%. This local adaptation catalyzed a global doctrinal shift. The approaching Second World War demanded institutionalized precision. Militaries abandoned rudimentary field training. States funded formal sniper schools to standardize the lethal geometry of urban combat. Bombed-out infrastructure replaced flat trench lines. Destroyed cities provided infinite vertical elevation and complex firing angles. Field commanders issued a strict operational directive to rip off all remaining visual insignia before stepping into the combat zone. Achieving such total invisibility demanded complex optical infrastructure. French military engineers began deploying these systems during the initial positional deadlocks. The execution prioritized geometric precision over speed. Aerial reconnaissance photographed the terrain daily. Analysts located a dead horse. Engineers drafted the exact dimensions. They constructed a rigid shell using paper and wood. The labor metric was exact. Technicians invested dozens of man-hours to build one single concealed position. All for one shot. The exchange occurred under absolute darkness. Infantry teams extracted the biological carcass. They positioned the replica at the precise coordinates. The dull sound of wind hitting painted papier-mâché replaced the organic mass. Inside the structure, the operator maintained static isolation. A hidden telephone cable ran from the dummy straight into the Allied trench. This wire transformed the sniper into a forward observer. He directed artillery strikes without pulling his trigger. Engineering units soon scaled the methodology. High-explosive barrages left only isolated tree stumps across the front line. Topographers measured the surviving timber. Workshops manufactured identical hollow cylinders. Nighttime infiltration teams swapped the real wood for the artificial posts. Dawn revealed an unchanged terrain. A spotter now controlled the elevated axis. Countermeasures shifted immediately. Command protocols removed visual identification from the equation. Artillery batteries systematically targeted and vaporized every remaining actual tree on the battlefield. To counter these engineered optical illusions, Entente forces developed protocols grounded in ballistic telemetry. Standard military doctrine prioritized lethal engagement. The new frontline reality demanded intentional, non-lethal wounding. Why expend ammunition on a non-lethal strike? Logistical analysis dictated that an injured unit depleted enemy resources exponentially faster. A deceased combatant consumed 0 active supplies. A surviving casualty initiated an immediate logistical cascade. One precision shot incapacitated the primary target. The subsequent extraction required 4 stretcher bearers. Medical supplies vanished. Field hospitals overflowed. The operation transformed from individual marksmanship into a systemic mechanism of attrition. Locating the origin of these calculated shots required strict geometric deduction. Entente units deployed highly detailed fake human heads. Infantrymen slowly elevated the models above the trench line. A concealed rubber tube traversed the interior structure. Smoke steadily filtered out, simulating a burning cigarette. The visual deception provoked an enemy discharge. A bullet struck. Officers retrieved the decoy. They measured the entry aperture. They aligned it with the exit fracture to isolate the exact trajectory vector. Analyzing bullet holes for artillery strikes bypassed direct infantry engagement entirely. Command transmitted the geometric data backward. Heavy batteries immediately pulverize the calculated coordinates. Psychological terror served only as a byproduct of mathematical warfare. The total personnel diverted to service one wounded unit equaled exactly 5. Such calculated attrition transformed the sniper into a sociological anomaly. During the First World War, extreme operational efficiency pushed marksmen entirely outside the boundaries of combat conventions. Opposing forces possessed no systemic countermeasures. Standard tactical doctrines failed. Frontline units adapted by altering the protocol. They institutionalized execution on the spot. Interrogators guaranteed a slow death for captured shooters. Therefore, infantrymen established immediate elimination as the primary frontline solution. Statistics dictated this zero-tolerance policy. At Gallipoli, the Australian operator Billy Singh recorded 150 confirmed kills. Unofficial combat logs indicated up to 300. 150 eliminations mathematically equaled the complete destruction of an average infantry company by a single human unit. This unprecedented combat output generated systemic hatred. Troops designated enemy marksmen exclusively for extrajudicial liquidation. Eradication paused only for specific logistical anomalies. Opposing sides established unwritten truces strictly for basic biological necessities. Battalions halted fire exclusively for designated water carriers or personnel moving to latrines. Beyond these micro-agreements, the environment remained a total kill zone. Troops no longer took prisoners. By 1941, the absolute certainty of execution failed to halt the Soviet Union. The state simply took precision terror and placed it on an industrial assembly line. What happens when targeted liquidation becomes a state doctrine? The Red Army mobilizes corps of thousands of specially trained female shooters. The German invasion began. The Wehrmacht encountered a systemic anomaly. The Soviet command deployed 2,000 female snipers directly to the front. This integration drove a radical demographic shift. These specialized female units consistently outperformed standard male infantry battalions in their precise kill-to-loss ratios. Frontline deployment carried calculated operational risks. Snipers operated under rigid state protocols. Each woman carried one heavy fragmentation grenade on her belt. The ribbed iron pressed cold against the hip during hours of stationary camouflage. Regulations assigned this specific explosive not for offensive throws, but for immediate self-destruction upon the threat of enemy capture. The state program demanded sheer numerical output. The statistics proved devastating. Ivan Sidorenko systematically eliminated over 500 targets. Lyudmila Pavlichenko delivered even more precise mathematical destruction. Her official ledger closed at 309 confirmed kills. 36 of those were direct counter-sniper operations. Pavlichenko pinpointed the enemy lens glare. She adjusted the optics. One trigger pull neutralized the German marksman. The state recorded another victory. This industrial-scale efficiency fractured German morale. The systematic elimination of officers by female specialists triggered a total institutional shock. German generals finalized a new operational directive. Field units received absolute orders to execute all female combatants immediately upon discovery without taking them prisoner. The chaotic mass elimination of Soviet snipers on the Eastern Front relied on sheer volume. 2 decades later, the Vietnam War compressed this doctrine into a mathematically precise instrument. Intelligence designated this new tactical vector as Apache. She weaponized acoustic mechanics. Apache conducted interrogations of captured personnel at a strictly calculated distance from the front line. She measured the perimeter to ensure the acoustic frequency of her voice resonated directly through the dense jungle canopy. The sound waves reached the United States Marine trenches. Troops heard the physiological destruction of their men. They lacked the coordinates to intervene. A single voice generated systemic operational paralysis across the combat sector. This localized terror demanded a counter-ballistic calculation. Command deployed sniper Carlos Hathcock to Hill 55. He countered the acoustic assault with pure mathematics. Hathcock triangulated the exact origin point of the sound. He calculated the crosswind. He adjusted the elevation dials on his 8-power Unertal telescopic sight. His firing platform was the Winchester Model 70. The field integration of this rifle marked a critical stage in the standardization of American sniper engineering. The variables aligned, the grid coordinates locked. Hathcock pulled the trigger and neutralized the target. The elimination of the Apache sniper remained a pinpoint surgical operation. In Sicily, the Allied response to sniper terror scaled into mass systemic execution. American troops lined up and executed exactly 73 Italian and German prisoners of war simultaneously. Why did the Allies shoot 73 surrendered soldiers? The systematic destruction of medical personnel required the creation of strict mathematical deterrence. The 1929 Geneva Convention collapsed. Legal systems failed to process tactical terror. The core catalyst originated elsewhere. The Pacific Front of the Second World War defined the new operational baseline. Japanese marksmen evaluated their battlefield priorities. They targeted field surgeons. They eliminated stretcher bearers. The prominent red cross on a medical helmet functioned as a primary aiming point. This calculation crippled infantry evacuation logistics. The invisible threat inflicted severe operational losses. Armies adjusted their combat parameters. Units stopped taking enemy marksmen alive. The captured soldiers in Sicily faced this exact operational logic. Command structures prioritized unit survival over international treaties. Surrender protocols vanished. Interrogations ceased. These summary execution protocols bypassed military tribunals and transitioned directly into all subsequent major conflicts. Fingers gripped the serrated cast iron of a fragmentation grenade. A steady pull extracted the split pin. A sharp metallic click confirmed the arm status. Maria Polivanova and Natalia Kovsheva maintained physical pressure on the safety lever. They waited for advancing German infantry to breach the perimeter. Then, they released the grip. This self-liquidation sequence bypassed capture. Commanders expanded the tactical brutality deployed against 73 prisoners in Sicily into an industrial extermination campaign on the Eastern Front. Their target was a precise demographic anomaly: 2,000 Soviet female snipers. Polivanova and Kovsheva registered 300 confirmed eliminations by 1942. Ammunition depletion fundamentally altered their tactical status. They transitioned from combatants to high-value targets. Surrender guaranteed protracted physiological destruction. Tatiana Baramzina executed 36 confirmed eliminations before an airborne insertion behind enemy lines. Upon her capture, local command completely ignored standard prisoner-of-war directives. Interrogation units subjected her to extreme anatomical trauma. The Wehrmacht utilized this specific violence as a calculated psychological deterrent against other operators. The deterrence failed. 800,000 women served in the Soviet armed forces. However, this specialized subset of 2,000 snipers demonstrated the absolute highest demographic mortality rate across all military branches. The severe threat of prolonged field interrogation permanently altered their operational behavior. The pragmatic deployment of a high-explosive charge against one's own coordinates became the default mechanism to preempt systemic torture. The mathematical outcome of these tactical decisions accumulated over 4 years. Systemic extermination protocols stabilized the casualty rate for this specialization at 75%. By the cessation of hostilities, the total count of surviving female operators equaled exactly 500. For the 500 operators who survived the Eastern Front, survival initiated a severe psychological decay. Marksmen in subsequent conflicts faced the exact same neurological deterioration. The Geneva Conventions of 1949 attempted to codify and regulate this extreme combat specialization. How does multi-day observation through optics alter human neurology? The brain maps the target's daily routine. An abstract enemy transforms into a familiar biological subject. Legally, the framework remains absolute. The Geneva Conventions protect snipers as standard combatants. Engaging legitimate military targets carries no criminal liability. While international law provides complete legal immunity for the operator, the neurobiological reality operates entirely outside these theoretical parameters. The protocol demands continuous visual lock. Optical distortion blurs the peripheral field. Eye muscles spasm violently from multi-day unbroken alignment with the crosshairs. Operators monitor hostile compounds for days. They catalog patrol routes. They assign distinct identifiers to individual guards. The cognitive distance collapses. When the execution order arrives, the mechanical action is mathematically precise. The visual feedback is instantaneous. The operator witnesses the exact biological termination of a recognized entity. This psychological architecture guarantees permanent neural degradation. The mental scarring outlasts the physical conflict. Decades later, the cognitive burden forces a systemic collapse. One documented operator finalized this trajectory with a post-war suicide. He documented his precise psychological disintegration. He formulated a comprehensive confession outlining the exact sequence of his mental collapse. The letter remained unread. Irina Stakova deployed to the war in Ukraine under the call sign Bagheera. She recorded 40 liquidations. When her unit retreated, advancing forces captured her. Past conflicts guaranteed a brutal death for an exposed sniper. But today, cold artificial intelligence algorithms and strict legal protocols overwrite the profound psychological trauma of manual observation. The modern battlefield replaces personal hatred with automated precision. The spotter measures the exact distance with a laser rangefinder. The shooter inputs the environmental data into a ballistic calculator. The software automatically compensates for wind velocity and the Coriolis effect. The operator tracks the target exclusively through the cold green glow of a night vision digital interface. Onboard artificial intelligence modules map the ideal trajectory of the bullet. Modern processors compute atmospheric density and the rotation of the Earth in milliseconds. This architecture completely eliminates the human factor. Empathy and anger vanish from the equation of the shot. The operator functions merely as a biological trigger for a digital weapon. This technological detachment dictates the final evolution of sniping. War shifted from intimate, bloody reprisals to a highly regulated algorithmic system. The machine computes the kill. International law regulates the aftermath. The military infrastructure processes the captive as a standard legal entity. Instead of an immediate summary execution, frontline infantry secured the perimeter and administered institutional medical care.